What's going on, everybody? Don here, and I just came back from my locals. I went 4-0 with Kid Eustass. This deck's absolutely insane. Now, throughout this video, I'm going to tell you what this deck's good against, what it's bad against, and basically why I made the certain choices I made in this profile. One Piece just recently came out, so the card pool is relatively short. So when you make a deck, it's really important to explain why, in my opinion, I think certain cards are important. But what I'm going to do is first show you the exact deck profile, all the cards, and then we're going to go back and circle around and talk about the deck itself. So out the gate, once again, I'm playing Kid Eustass, probably the best leader in the game right now. We'll just pop him up there. I'm playing double X-Drake, double Basil Hawkins, the other X-Drake, the 4-drop, one Killer, 2 of the Okiku, a playset of Izio, and a playset of Raizo. And then we're also going the Neko Memushi. I feel like this card's another name. I forget the other name of this card, but then we also have a playset of Killer, a playset of Scratchman Apu, a playset of Julie Bonnie's card's absolutely amazing. You got, of course, you got your playset of Capone. You got 2 Punk Gibsons, Straw Sword, and Double Paradise Waterfall. And then we have 4 of each of the Eustass Kid 7-drop and Eustass Kid 8-drop. So let's go over the deck and we'll go backwards and talk about what's so good about this deck. Now, right at the gate, I feel like this is the best build of Kid Eustass right now because the majority of people don't know how to counter this build. Like, a majority of people. Me going to locals yesterday and actually going 4-0 was more or less my wins were based on how people could not deal with an 8-drop Kid Eustass touching down on board. It's really hard for a lot of players that don't have the experience to deal with that. And I think that one of the best decks against Kid Eustass is probably Kaido. Now, there was Kaido and actually wound up playing one of the Kaidos at my locals. Luckily, he didn't get the 10-drop Kaido out in time, so I was able to win with Kid Eustass. But 10-drop Kaido is a massive problem. If you're playing Kid Eustass, you gotta kind of like build your board up, but you still gotta find a way to hold an 8-drop Kid Eustass as well as a blocker, any blocker. I like to do the 1-drop Capone just to make sure that you can reset your board relatively quickly, because that Kaido's gonna start going for face at 12,000, and you're probably not gonna be able to block it as easily. The reason why we're running 4 Eustass and 4 of the 7 and 8-drop Eustass is because we always want to see this card. Yes, we do have searches like Julie Bonnie, but our opponent will stop us. Actually, I'm going to be uploading on this channel the finals of that locals, and you can see me drop Julie Bonnie. My opponent immediately get rid of it off the board because they knew if I kept using it, I would get an advantage. I actually have another match I'm uploading of showing you what happens when Julie Bonnie's left on the board. She's going to get value quickly, so she has to get off the board quickly, but a lot of players might not know that's the best thing to do, and they'll leave her on board because they're more focused on the bigger things. So that's kind of important. This is probably one of the best cards in the deck, though in the early game and the late game, Eustass is the best card in the deck. So these two are basically the best cards in the deck in the early and late game. I wouldn't even argue for mid game, even though it's a 2-drop. I think Killer's really good because it's a blocker. It's gonna let you draw. You also have the Raizo. This card says when attacking once per turn, you have 2 or more arrested characters, draw 1 card. He's a 3-drop 4K. He's also a phenomenal card, and he's going to allow you to draw many cards. Because once again, that's what you want to do. By the time you're in late game, you do want to drop your kid, and ideally some blockers or whatnot, or whatever you're established on board. But you also want to make sure you have another kid ready for when your kid goes off the board. Because your opponent will dedicate a ton of resources getting rid of this 1 card. And if you have 4 in your deck, well, you're going to be able to do well. Another thing I think is really good against Kid is Rush Zoro, and I think those decks kind of come out to being a race, where you're racing Rush Zoro versus Kid. Rush Zoro, in my opinion, I think will beat Kid if they both draw decently, and I think both builds are really good, but I think the Rush Zoro can outpace a Kid if built properly, and once again, both players obviously draw ideal. So I do think this is really good. With Scratchman Apu, I really didn't really play this card, but it's 2K blocker. It is really good. I did play, I think it was a Crocodile. It was a hybrid Crocodile deck that ran a lot of events. So this is good to resting those events. So it did work for me, but for the most part, this was a 2K blocker. As far as like Izio, so then we have like the tap cards. Izio's on play, you rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. Nico Mamushi, he's another one that rests characters with 3 or less. So basically what you're doing is you're just resting your opponent's characters. You're trying to get some life damage done early in the game. You're trying to put some threats on the board and make your opponent focus on your board rather than your life with Kid. Because you really don't want to be ideally low in life in the mid game. That's if you are, you're basically screwed. So you want to kind of manage that. Another card I played was also X-Rake. This card's not bad. I mean, when it's rested, it basically gives all your supernovas 1,000 attack, which is really relevant for all your stuff. So I do like this card a lot. It's a 1k counter. I think 2 is more than enough. Basil Hawk, I never really get a chance to play as much. He's a Don 1. Once per turn, if this character battles your opponent's character, set this card as active. So he's not bad as well for getting a little extra advantage. Near the end game, he is a 5, so you ideally would drop him up before your 7 drop. Not bad of a card as well. Doesn't really have any counters, so you don't want to play for him in deck. A lot of decks are playing X-Rake. His ability is on play. Knock out one of your opponent's rusted characters with cost of 4 or less. He's not bad. Once again, you can pair him up with any of the Nikamushis, any of Izios, and of course, you can even, well, we'll talk about her in a second, but he basically helps you get rid of clear cards on your opponent's board, limits their game state. So as they're limiting game state, as they're slowly rebuilding their board, once again, you're getting ready to drop the Atom Bomb, which is this. And then we have Okiku. This card is amazing. It actually overperformed a lot for me. When I played against my red matchup, this card actually came in clutch as well. Don 1, when attacking, once per turn, rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. What I like about this card is it's 5k, so it's going to face a lot of the leader cards. But also when it swings, it's going to be able to tap down a blocker. And that's basically what I was doing with her a majority of the time. As a 3-drop, I think she's good. I might even bump her up in the deck. I really do like her a lot. I was testing out one killer and seeing how I felt about him. On play, knock out one of your opponent's arrested characters with a cost of 3 or less. He's basically another version of Drake with a cheaper cost, but he hits less. Once again, Drake's hitting for 6k. He's hitting for 3k. I tested him out. He's alright. I would probably not consider him in the future. I might just go back to playing 3 Drake in that instance. We'll talk about event cards in a second because I feel like they're their own beast. The best cards in the deck are these. Easily. Early game, this is what you're mulliganing for. 100 million%. I mean, this is not bad. It's going to help protect your life, which, once again, we want to get the late game, so that's kind of cool. But you really want to pair this with this. If you get this early game, this is what you ideally want. Even if you go second, I'd rather go second, play bonding, tap bonding, get that value going immediately. If my opponent ignores this card, we're going to get a lot of value off her. So I really do like Julia Bonding. I think she's a phenomenal card in the deck. And then, once again, Capone's phenomenal. I think this card's great. He's also a supernova, so Bonnie can search him, which is really cool. So, once again, really, really broken card in the deck, and probably my favorite card in the early game. Then we have a couple of cards. I'll talk about Punk Gibson. This card, counter your leader or one of your characters gain 4k, and then rest one of your opponent's character 4 or less. Really cool, once again, if you want to save yourself, and of course, tap on a blocker. I've done this many times. Great card. Paradise Waterfall is a counter. Your leader or one of your characters gain 2k, then set one of your characters as active. It's decent. I'm not a big fan of this card. I don't hate this card, but I'd rather play a Pug Gibson for one more extra Don. You can do so much more, and I do like this card a lot more. It's not a terrible card, but I'm not crazy about this card. I did work a couple of times, but once again, it's nothing that's you're gonna cry home to. It's all right. And then Straw Sword, very underrated card in the game. This card is main rest one of your opponent's characters. This card's really good as well. Ideally, want to play this card later on in the game, but it's only 2 Don as well. So I do like this card a lot. I think Punk Gibson and Straw Sword are probably the best. I might still play Paradise Waterfall. It's okay. It triggers like I want your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 4 or less, so it's not terrible, but it's not the best card. I don't know. I'm like 50-50 on it. The best card in the deck, and the reason why this deck is the best deck, is because of 8-drop Kid Eustass. I would even argue 7-drop's really good. 7-drop Don 1, that this card is active, is crazy. He swings for 8k, and if he has 1 Don, and turn, he goes active. That's crazy. And of course, Kid Eustass is literally the best card in the deck. The reason why this deck's even kind of relevant. I might try Law out and try him in Law, but I wanted to try a mono green build today. I wanted to feel how it worked, and to be honest with you, it worked really well. I think Kid Eustass is absolutely one of the best cards in the game right now. And it's crazy because, like, everyone's freaking out over red stuff. And don't get me wrong, I think Zora Red gets really good at the next set, like insane. And it's still really good right now. Probably one of the best decks to fight a Kid in the early game. But I still think Kid's like one of the best universal decks because this is one card that exists. This card should have been a 10-drop, if I want to be honest. It would have been a lot more fair. It being an 8-drop is insanely relevant. Kaido touches down, nukes your board. You bring another one out with a blocker, and then we're just resetting the game state, and your opponent's in a bad position. So I think this is a great card. Obviously, I think that a lot of players playing this game is gonna have a huge time, a hard time and struggle with what this deck can do. And I do think that this will probably be one of the most dominant decks as it stands right now until people realize how to beat this deck. Stay tuned for more videos on this channel. Subscribe. I will go over videos on how to beat this deck. I'll show you how to do it. There's a lot of cool decks to do it, and a lot of different mentalities with a lot of different decks. I'm playing all of them at my locals. Hopefully, I'll be going to, there's 2 cups in February I'm going to go to, and I'll be able to compete in those events, and I'll have all my videos about that. So if you want to stay tuned for One Piece TCG content, I highly recommend you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and notification bell. And what deck you're playing right now, comment down below. Anyway, this is the Don, and you Pythons have a great day.